I did it again. So anyone who was here earlier decided not to tell me that I was on mute this whole time. Fuck. Yeah, just watching me struggle. I always am afraid I'm going to do that, and then I end up doing it. And because there's no one here, no one says anything, so I don't know. Again, the perils of DVR content. You really didn't miss much. You missed me rambling and complaining about importing into Capture One. Nothing to be gained from that. I did notice, I did watch like a little bit of my own stream, as hard as that is to do, and a little too salty. Gonna have to lighten up a little bit. I'm easily frustrated by stupid software, but yeah, no one needs more negativity, so not gonna do that here. Yeah, so while this is importing, I shot a lot. Like, I kind of didn't know what to expect going into like shooting in this area. Like I've been to the area. There's like Tamales Bay, that's inside the bay, but I had no idea what like the other side of the bay was, and that's kind of where Point Reyes is. And yeah, again, just got super lucky with conditions. So I hope there's some interesting stuff in here. There's some videos of, I'm just going to kind of jump around because I think there's a lot of stuff in terms of just like filtering through everything. I don't think I'm going to do a great job of it. I think I can kind of go through and just pick out a couple and start doing some edits. I did try and take some videos of stuff like this. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, if I'm being entirely honest. Just like the wind blowing so strong that it like basically just blew it up into the air. And that's because like we're on top of this large cliff. I think it was just funneling the wind along the coast, and it was fucking crazy. Yeah, we basically just like sat up there and you could just see like the wind blowing through, which was wild. So I got some video of that. I don't know where that is and why it's not. I see all the JPEGs. Maybe it's doing video last, I don't know. I don't see file format. Again, they don't have file format. Why? Why not? Yeah, these sequences crack me up. Totally useless. So the video is somewhere buried in between these, but if it's by name, it seems to be doing like this, isolating the JPEGs, which is the preview for the video, to here. I don't know. I really don't. But I'll probably start with some photos, just kind of pick and choose a couple that I had some high hopes for, see if they turn out to anything decent. Probably pop into some videos, see if I can do some stabilization, some color grading, all that fun stuff. Yeah, where are those videos? But you see, like, it was a proper full day. And as you can probably tell, a lot of this is like shooting, some of this stuff is like 3 stops down. Which I think is probably too much. I think I just have a very loose metering setting on my camera, so when I'm shooting into the sun, where is some of that? Like some of this stuff, like it looks like shit, but if you want to save the highlights in any capacity and have any sort of control, like this is kind of where you need to go. I do think going 3 stops down is probably too much. Let's see. We go into, I mean, histogram's not even close. This must not be. So there's the proof. 3 stops is too much. You don't need to do that. Oh yeah, there's deer down here. Can't see him. I'm more after like this kind of arch, and then this. So I have like my general preset, whatever. Just add some like light contrast. But for this, like, gonna need to be like up a stop, up like a full, probably 2. Which, I mean, you can see like you can do without too much effect. I think the grain settings, yeah, these are out of control. So because, I don't know, from my last stream, I've sort of dumped DaVinci Resolve for now. Kind of a lot of reasons. The biggest one is color profiles. I basically just ran into like an ever more complex problem every time I touched it. And when you import it and the way that certain effects are applied, you need to transform the color profile into a linear profile and then back to the original. Something happens in there where just like the gamma just goes to shit. And I've gotten to a point where I started adding on like a node at the end where I was just doing like tweaks to compensate for this lack of gamma that I wasn't getting back when I was reverting back to an sRGB profile. And again, like I'm kind of on my own and all that shit. I don't know if I was going about it in the best way, but basically I just started noticing tons of issues. Whereas if I stuck to Capture One, it didn't really fuck with color profiles at all. I don't get a lot of the film emulation characteristics that I like, which was getting to like the halation and just like general softness. I've tried to fuck around with it with clarity. It's, you know, it kind of works. Negative clarity, negative structure. It's not the best, but at least takes like some of the bite off of images. It's not nearly as soft as I'd like it, but the trade-off of like going down the color profile rabbit hole and then also having to worry about exporting from Capture One, tracking that into a specific location, importing that into DaVinci Resolve, doing the color grades, and then re-exporting into another location. And there's this file naming, file location. It's just kind of all doubling up, and it's maybe worth it. I don't know. I do like some of the results I get from there, and maybe I'll do some kind of marquee images like that, but I don't see myself really wanting to duke it out all that much. So that's kind of what happened there. I think it was a really fun experiment to kind of get to know how that works. Because then again, like when I'm doing any sort of video editing, like if some of the videos I've taken from today I bring into DaVinci Resolve, I'll have a good idea of like, I actually have like kind of like a film preset that also works well for video. It's not perfect. I'm probably gonna annoy a lot of purists with it, but I don't know. It's close to the look I wish my stills would get. And you can see like I'm starting to use soft grain instead of, I think the setting's harsh grain, or I think that's what I was using, or silver rich. I never really use fine grain. I think the soft grain is the best in terms of like getting that filmish look. Like I want large grain, but I don't want it too overbearing, because I've seen what too overbearing grain does. Pull my Stream Deck out here. So I'm just kind of taking a look at some of these. You'll notice I'll just start marking some of them green or yellow. So these are the ones that have potential. See, like there was some pretty wild conditions. Definitely look kind of like Big Sur, if I'm being honest. So how I'm exploring the best way to do this, because I noticed some issue with like my eye being fatigued in terms of like you seeing too many of the same images. Because you can see like this long coastline. It's like, which of these is the best? And it's like, well, I don't know. If I start going in at like this sort of level, like I don't get the perspective and context of the fact that like I remember when I shot it, and I know I took a lot of angles, but oh, it should be no color. I know I have options to choose from, but like if I start like, that's not quite right, and I delete it, or if I mark it as good and not realizing I have a couple other options later. I do wish I can get a little bit bigger thumbnails, but I'm sure there's some performance issues with that. I think for me, it's like all about showing the vastness, and it doesn't always translate in viewfinder. I don't know why, but this shit reminds me of like Iceland. There's like I can't remember the lighthouse you can go up to, but you like look down the cliff. Like, have you ever seen like a long black sand beach picture from Iceland? Like, that's where it is. Everyone takes it. The name is escaping me because Icelandic names are impossible to fucking remember. This is the other problem, is like you start shooting from one vantage point thinking like, okay, I need to start shooting all of these angles from this vantage because this is the best vantage I'm going to get. And then you walk up a little bit further and you realize like, oh shit, like I can get it without the hillside in here. So then you start doing it all over again of like, all right, what does it look with like the higher horizon line or like the lower horizon line or even lower. So it's one of those things. And like the benefit of this is like, I don't have to get rid of any of them just yet. I'm just trying to pick out ones that I think show promise. And for me, I think this is probably the one that I think is the best. So again, marking it yellow here. Yeah, and there's so much stuff that just like looks good in the viewfinder, but then you just pull it in to like a full screen view and it just doesn't equate for some reason. I don't know why. Like some of this stuff looked rad, just being there. This kind of killed it. If this was kind of by itself, it could be kind of interesting. Fucking birds. I don't know if that's a peregrine falcon or not. Useless. Deer shooting straight into the sun, totally useless. But I'm not quite at a point where I want to start deleting. I'm kind of just like taking a high level view of like what I have to work with. And I think there's some potential to this. Oh, I went full screen. I fucked everything up. The vastness of the white on my webcam? How much time do you got? I can go on all day about that shit, man. It's kind of white. It's true. Needs a white candle back there. Just saying. Mr. Fratelli. Why am I going back here? Fucking white vastness. God damn it. I live in a sane asylum. It's only fitting. Long overdue. See, and this is like... This is at 1/60th of a second. I never thought this shit would turn out blurry. Like, this is f/18, so it's not a depth of field issue. I think it's just this shit's moving too much. Which is kind of wild. But, there you go. Zach, I'm glad you could find humor in that. Oh. I'm ready for padded walls next. I think that's the next evolution. See this? I don't know if this is... I was just really annoyed with this rock this whole time, but I mean, it's... Give DaVinci not DaVinci Resolve. Capture One credit. Their healing brush is extremely capable, as it fucks it up pretty bad. It needs a little hand holding. But if you're looking over here, like, no one's fucking looking there. So toss up some these bad boys. Yeah, this is where I get curious. Like, I know I need to focus on some edits or like getting through the photos first, but like I just fucking get in the candy store. I'm an idiot. Zach, I know you had some questions about some photo editing stuff. Always down to be distracted and getting away from being productive. So hit me with them if you got them, man. And I'm coming off of like just totally scrapping everything. I just keep changing it. I don't know why. It's not a good thing. Because then I have all these exports like into my like my wallpaper folder. So these DRXs and JPEGs is like, this is coming out of DaVinci Resolve, and like how I'm managing this is just a fucking nightmare. So ever going back to Adobe, I'm got a sad admission to make. I went for like the full suite. After Effects is irreplaceable and Photoshop's irreplaceable. Last time I opened up Lightroom, crashed the stream. So, Mike, I'll blame you if this crashes it. I bet it's not going to find my catalog because I moved everything to my drives. Oh, it's all, and it's gone. Let's see if we can maybe synchronize this in the background. This was originals. Photos. Uh-oh. Ironically, some kind of similar photos from Big Sur. But I'm kind of curious, like, I haven't been in here in a long time, and I know none of the shortcuts. So I don't even, is it develop? It is. Fucking A, still got it. Oh, fuck. Is it D to get out? Grid view? It is grid view. Yeah, Zach, I've heard. So I have like the Sony version of Capture One. I've heard there's a Fuji version for it. I guess like the color profiles and the importing and all that stuff is better. I'm still have this here. I haven't updated it with any of the new content. I think I stopped. That can't be right. 2017? Oh, there's a lot missing, I think. That's kind of bad, because I definitely shot stuff from Hawaii. I think I switched to Capture One this year, but I can't find it. But I did hear, let's see if I can, if there's anything decent. Develop. I've heard the color grading. Yeah, this is all brand new to me. Last time I was here, this didn't exist. Kind of wonder. Right, let's see if we can do something. Presence. Leave it to them to fucking name it like the stupidest thing ever. So you can see, like, you can see this on Instagram. a good bit. Like how negative texture to 100 just is applied. Like look at this, it's just ghosted. And like maybe if you're into like the ethereal dream look, but it's just like your horizon's just gone. Why not? Oh, I can. Like, you kind of want that. Oh shit, how do I get out of here? That's it. There we go. Negative clarity, dehaze. Oh my god. So I don't think they had anything more than clarity. So this is where I spent like most of my time. I'm just kind of curious how these colors are applied. Is this luminance? This is luminance. Okay, save your midtones. I always start shadows, I don't know why. It's like if you bring some reds in. This is gonna be a worthless edit. I don't know why I'm doing this. It is interesting to see that they have this. It seems like they've done some updates to it as well. Blending. What the fuck is that? Oh, it's just like an opacity balance. I mean, it's interesting. This is new too, Mike? You can do like, I like the idea of like doing smoother curves. It's always a pain. But can you not? There's gotta be a setting for this, right? There has to be. Isn't it like a manual? Fuck. Alright, I don't know. This is all foreign to me. I don't know why. Oh, it's this. This is the point. What is this called? Parametric curve. I'll give it to him. Like that probably is the closest thing to levels, which I'm kind of doing. I almost don't touch curves unless I'm correcting things. I think I was rambling about that in the last stream. But basically, like in order to get like smoothness, like I don't really fuck around with curves unless I have to. Like curves is like I created a color balance and I see like banding, or I just see like a weird balance that I don't want to go back and like redo all of my color balance. So then I'll just fix it with like, okay, so there's like a spike in the shadows, like I'll just add a point and just be like, all right, I'm just gonna remove it there. But I think I saw some. Am I dropping the exposure and bumping the shadows up for darker images? Yeah, we can pivot to some darker images real fast. We'll go to select. I was just working on some darker images. I should probably wheel away and turn these lights off. I don't know. I won't be the super light fastness in my room, but I don't think anyone gives a fuck. Making sure I'm in frame. What in God's name is going on? So let's see if we can find some darker images that are ideally finished. I don't know if you have anything in mind. Or am I shooting with a darker exposure to begin with? Not always. It's kind of a mix, if I'm being honest. I mean, this is one that I feel like kind of, it's about as dark as I'd advocate going. And it's from a pretty regular exposure. It's just kind of the tonality and like how direct the sun is. Usually under cloud cover, you can kind of get away with doing it, but I'm shooting fairly neutrally on a lot of these. I think the biggest thing for me is just retaining information. So you can see on some of the other shots I was importing, where I'm shooting into the sun, like I'll use the dial on the camera and I'll go down like 2 or 3 stops just to, well, on the Sony, well, I don't know what it is on the Fuji, but so I pretty much do everything in post. Even if it's like a rainy day, let's see, like this is, I mean, I guess on the darker side, but like the original is like pretty standard. It's just, yeah, like you can only really go dark convincingly if there is no like bright light source, basically. Like if the sun was here and it had all these highlights, like the second you get into the like just nuking highlights, it starts looking fake. So I don't know how much that answers it. And like that's where like monitor calibration is important, and this is where I was running into issues with color profiles. I mean, if you just look at like how little the contrast is between some of the information, it's just like the fucking calibration matters, the color profile matters, and then you send it off to some like 10-year-old Acer 13-inch laptop, and then like who the fuck knows what it looks like. So that's always going to be the danger with these. But again, I think there's certain conditions that lend itself to darker stuff. It's like if I try to take anything with like a direct sunlight, it's kind of hard. And with this, you can kind of see like the original. It's just avoiding being overexposed is all I'm making sure of. And in terms of like how I approach the edit from there, I'm gonna see if I can do just like I'll just do it from scratch. Show in library, is this gonna work? I swear it never works when I'm on stream. You're supposed to be able to right click show in Finder because I have these all collected in a selects folder. I have the stupidest names too, so don't judge me if you're reading any of these. Like Olympic National Park. This is old school. I think you just saw that one there. Oh, where's this one? How the fuck did I get here? That's interesting. And there's no back function in Capture One, so I don't know. How did I get here? I went from here to that folder further down. I don't get it. Okay. Let's find something. This image. I guess it's kind of already edited. Fuck. Because there's a lot of these days where it's just like, I mean, you can't go dark with any of these. It's just like desert shots. Uh-oh. Did turn off Do Not Disturb. Yeah, I think the best way for me to do it's probably just some of these Olympic. These are inherently dark. Although day 2, I think is what I was looking at. Something with some contrast. I think it looks, it's kind of a boring shot. It's got to be something better. There you go. Starting from scratch. So, I have my preset, whatever, just adds points to all my curves in case I need it. Adds a little exposure because I usually stop down. So that's kind of in general. Like I almost never shoot at like 0 exposure. Sure, I'm getting all this. So that kind of helps compensate and just automatically gets me back to kind of neutral. But in general, I'll start with the contrast down a little bit. I'll start with the brightness down. That's just kind of personal preference. But in the instance of these, like I will bring the exposure back down a little bit, and I'll typically nuke the contrast, just because there's ways of establishing your own contrast. I think I was talking about this in one of my last streams, but from my understanding, it's kind of like shooting log in video. Is like you have this very kind of just blank or like bland flat image, but that gives you the most information to work with. Because once you have blowouts, it's information's gone. And I think I was talking to someone else. I guess it's the opposite with film. It's like if you need to recover highlights in film, it's a lot easier than recovering shadows. But in digital, it's easier to recover shadows than it is highlights, supposedly. It sounds right to me, but I don't shoot film at all, ever, to be able to validate that. But that's kind of what I had heard. So for me, capture one, like, I'll get the exposure kind of right. I try and use the white balance to kind of get it neutral, but kind of leaning into what I'm thinking for the grade, as I need to straighten the horizon. And again, I have the wrong grain settings being applied to this. So I'm back on soft grain. I don't know if you're here for this part, Zach, but kind of talking about higher granularity, but lower impact. So it's like bigger film grain. But I don't really like any of them, if I'm being entirely honest. And so then it becomes kind of like this back and forth between like this and levels, like moving like the midpoint, like how much I want to kind of limit the highlights. So this is a big piece for me, at least in terms of editing dark images, because it really like takes, because sometimes you don't always have like a foggy day to work with. So even if it's like a little bit brighter and you still want to make it dark, you still can. And this is kind of a way to cheat it a little bit. Like sometimes I'll get all the way down here and like you can see the levels on like the histogram that I'm working with is super narrow. But again, like that gets you, I think, closer to that dark feel. And by default, some of my preset effects is like the levels, like I increase the, well, I had to like lift the black point basically. So it's never like, I just don't think like pure blacks, pure whites don't exist. So I don't have in my images. That's just my stupid thing. But again, like getting this sort of feeling as close as it can and then using high dynamic range for adjustments. Sometimes I'll pull the shadows out a little bit. Like I'm trying not to shy away from being like having stuff without information. I think it's always tempting to just like pull it up as high as you can and just like show everything. But I used to do that. And I think there's something to be said for just showing all the information. But for me, it's about just like when things are darker, you don't always see anything, and just as long as like what you're seeing is the most important information. So then you can kind of like guide focus of like, so if this is too dark, then like you don't really see, like you're not really looking there. Like there's interesting texture here, but is this really the point of the image? And I think with this one, it's pretty much the rocks hanging out there. But it's, I don't know. It's always a balance, and like this is always fluid. Like also, I'll come down to shadows and realize like, oh, I kind of like lifting the shadows, and in this instance, like lifting the shadows flattens it out because it's all so limited down to a narrow range. Like I'm lifting up the shadows into something more of like, I guess by their nomenclature, white. So then you're just reducing the contrast between the different pixels. So yeah, then you might find like, okay, well, then it feels like I'm lightening it too much. So then I maybe like start darkening a little bit. But a lot of this stuff, like I'll just start like testing it because I think I want to go really dark, but I just find like maybe like a lesser contrast, brighter image feels right. I don't know if that's super helpful or not. This is the problem with me doing these streams is like I'm kind of winging it, like it's all feel. So I don't have like an ironclad process, and I think like I've mentioned it on here before of like this helps me vocalize it and try and like. I think in one of the previous streams I just acknowledged the fact that like I have no idea what my process is when it comes to curves, levels, and high dynamic range anymore. Like, I don't know what order I'm doing it. I don't know why I'm doing it in that order. I don't even know how it's processed. That's more when it comes to colors, but which probably a good segue. Although I kind of want to like lower the dark end down. So you can see like when you start lowering it down when things are so limited, like there's no information in that. Like you could start pulling it up and start showing it, but this is where it's like personal taste. Like I don't feel that information is necessary. So I don't have an issue with just like nuking that information out. Like I buy these expensive tack sharp lenses so I can just get rid of all the sharpness in it, which sounds super counterproductive, I realize, but at least you get the control of like what's in focus, what's not. Because if you start with like a shitty lens and like you want something sharp, then it's just never sharp. But if you start with it all sharp, then you can kind of be selective in terms of like, okay, I want this part sharp, but not that part. You can control that. Do it in post, I guess, is what some people say. I say a lot. It's like digital to me, it's all made in post. It's like if you give a film photographer a digital camera, like watch out for their color grades. Like it's not. I mean, some of them are okay with it, but they just don't understand the process. They're more focused on like capturing the moment and being more technically sound that way. They don't, and then the colors are kind of like, I hate to say it, but kind of like done for them in some capacity. Yeah, probably not a popular opinion, but whatever. And this is also like, so doing the values here, like a lot of it's like as a theme is reducing contrast. But sometimes like I find myself coming into here and using these to kind of just like test it. Like I'll just come in and like see, because again, this is like a very smooth way. Like when you're operating such a narrow window of values, the smoother you can be, the better. Like the second you start just like hammering the curves with, I mean, you get a lot of trouble with this. Not the best example, but you'll get banding. I don't know why it's not showing up now. Maybe because the values are smoother, so I didn't just like start tugging on those too hard in one way or the other. Like the moment you create like instantaneous, the more like instantaneous contrast you have throughout your image, the higher probability of a banding. And the more you push things with like local edits, with like selective colors, you're creating color contrast, which then has to be interpreted across a gradient, which then like, I always like blame the Instagram algorithm or like the compression, but you can do it right. Like I think that was a sign of like I was too aggressive with what I was trying to do, and it wasn't helping. Let's say that. Color balance for this, again, like this is all personal preference at this point. So you kind of already have like all option hold. So this is kind of like the base exposure of what I would do for a dark image. So now that we're applying a color, like this is purely stylistic, and it's just like, this is how I do it. So even though like an image is colder, throw the air quotes. I don't know if it's too dark to see, but I do find that it's important to have a balance. I don't advocate for just hammering the temperature or the tint one way, of just like, that's how I'm going to make a colder feeling image. A lot of air quotes. I don't think that's what I would advocate for doing. I think you can create a more dynamic image by like using the three-way and then coming up with a color palette that's sort of tangential. So you can do it depending on how lightly you apply it. So this is being the opacity. Like if I just like do something very lightly and I have like just shadows in the green, highlights in the red, and like, I don't know, it's probably a better example of like shadows in the green, like midtones in the red. Like that value range is going to have a high color contrast, and that's going to open you up to potential problems. It could be fine depending on your image, especially when flattening stuff out like this. The gradations are pretty subtle, so when you start creating color contrast that's really extreme, it can just go sideways. That being said, like I don't believe in just like, I mean, there's always exceptions to this, but sometimes, where did I have it? Like bringing in some like greens and yellows through the midtones, I think, and then having the shadows more blue. Sometimes I'll go red as a way of neutralizing it and just kind of tone this down. The problem being is that I haven't found the way that color balance is applied to the images that it's not relative to your histogram. So this shadow is always going to be like, I guess it's like the bottom third, which technically is all of this. Like the highlights shouldn't do much. Like it does do some, and this is where like I don't quite get it. Like I am impacting the image from the highlights. There's zero information technically in the midtones or highlights by relative standard or by like histogram standards. So I don't get that part of it. I know like shadow's gonna be the biggest impact, and that's where like if you start adding red to a really dark image, it kind of becomes problematic. So I've gone back and forth. Like I like the neutral or like offsetting a lot of like the heavier kind of cooler tones with a very warm shadow. I think that tends to help things a little bit. And then like choosing a mid-tone that is sort of tangential to like a blue or green, and sometimes it's yellow, and I think it gets kind of interesting. You see some people out there like really hammering it, and I think it's more interesting to me than just like going all blue, which again, like I'm really not mad about that at all. Like I think having a little bit of red offsets it. But a more recent approach I've been doing is I'll still lean into the blue and kind of colder tones through the color wheel. This needs to come down, I think probably. I do like kind of neutralizing a little bit, and then the highlight. Like, I'll just take laps, like do a lap. I think that's kind of nice. I think this could be, so, see, then it gets like too heavy-handed, so this is where maybe I'm going a little overboard. I do kind of like it. So what I was going to do was come back into the curves panel. So this is where I always bump the red, like, I don't know if it's shadows, but that's my way of neutralizing the blues that inherently come in shadows, by just upping the reds a little bit. But you can kind of create that offset with the curves panel by just isolating it to this. And that's where you can kind of have these instantaneous moments of like, I just want to like save the shadows a little bit from being just like overwhelmingly blue. Because I think like you can do it. That's not a great example. After all the colors applied. But that being said, like even this adjustment here, like I think just moving it a little bit colder, even though this was initially accurate to the image, like I think it feels a little bit better. You can see like these sort of areas through here becoming a little oversaturated with blues, so it's that's the problem I think with like using these global controls for that. But I mean, this is like a first pass, kind of doing it quickly. You can see like it is a little different from, these are older edits. I think this is kind of where my taste is going these days. But yeah, I don't know, Zach, if there's anything about this specifically that I left out. Oh, and one thing I always do is always forget the master. And like this is kind of used sparingly. Sometimes it's helpful to kind of unify, like if I've started like deviating and like adding like warm whatever midtones in this very dark image, sometimes it can kind of pull it together a little bit, so I'll use that as like a unifying element of like, all right, this is ultimately a cold image. I've kind of deviated it through some of the individual channels, but this will kind of be the glue between it. And you can see like I didn't even use it and I was kind of happy with it. Kind of see like when you up it, like it gets a little ham-fisted through here. You can see like through here it gets a little oversaturated with blues, but yeah. So less contrast. Step one, shooting down a stop, probably is step two. And then yeah, getting weird with color. Not being afraid to like just try something, because I think I used to get caught in the trap of just like add blue, add green. That was my next phase. Like this to me, like this is older edit. I think I had this on one of my other streams. Like it just feels too saturated through these sections. Like I'd want a little more balance. Like I think this like yellow tonality feels good. But yeah, this is way old. So I have all these like color adjustments, film highlight treatments, all that stuff. Peter, what's happening? Oh, there's actually people here. This is weird. I'm stoked. Like again, like if you have any questions, like my initial thought was doing this sort of point Reyes shoot, but like again, like dark photos, like love doing that shit. Don't have to ask me twice to do it. See, these are the JPEGs. What's going on? Is it MP4? MOV? What? I don't know if they imported them or not. I'm kind of worried. At the end? Not at the end. Where are my videos? Yeah, where was I? So point Reyes. So this is like kind of the other end of the spectrum, like with bright imagery. It's still kind of the same principle for me. I'm kind of in a light contrast sort of mode. I think that's where you can kind of control the most stuff. But yeah, I mean, shooting into the sun, that's always kind of a problem. But stuff like this, as you can see, like even the grain settings I have are kind of killing it. So I think this needs to come up. So some of the same principles apply for this. Like because I shot it down a stop, I'm actually lowering the white point. If that's the right word. But again, like you still want to retain like some of the texture in here. Which I didn't do a great job because I shot at f8. Which is really stupid. Am I still exploring Resolve for photos? So I can fire that up. Short answer is no. I just can't control color profiles, is what has come of it. I can kind of do like a quick walkthrough of what I was doing and kind of the effects I was going for. But basically, like, I would open an image I'd edit it in Capture One initially. So I do a lot of the color grade, so I wasn't, because I know this tool super well, and I think, which I was also torn with, because I think there's way more capable tools in terms of color grading in DaVinci Resolve, like all the different like hue versus saturation, saturation versus saturation, like those just don't exist in Capture One. I guess there's a 17.0. Oh, I guess they're out of beta. Interesting. It's been a while since I opened it. Let's see. I've got my timeline here. All my media's gone. That's good. Be great for showing what I'm trying to do here. This is the other problem, is like this stuff sort of becomes unmanageable. So I'll go to color. I'll bypass all. So it was a little bit of color grading. Let's see if I can get rid of this. So I have my, I don't know if I can show it. No, cable's too short. So I have my own like icon set, which I'm hoping to finish someday and release it, but basically, like, this is where things get weird, is you have to do this color space transform, and going from sRGB to linear, I believe. I don't know. I kept on getting hung up on it, and I saw a lot of tutorials on how to do it. Actually, in looking at this, like, this looks wrong. But basically, like, I would import it. It looked fine. I would look at it in here. But even, like, I'd have this tweaks, basically. Like, you can see, like, all the gamma's kind of gone. It did have a lot of the softness that I was looking for. Let's get... Oh, what are you doing? Problem is I don't remember any of my shortcuts. Stop. Color. This qualifier off. So I was adding halation in. This isn't the greatest image because it doesn't have a ton. It's not very high contrast. I added some like film. So this is where it uses what's it called? Film nitrate. By default, like I didn't do a ton of like the film chroma, but I think like some of the softening, it's as simple as like a box blur. Like that's one of the biggest things I wanted, was like a way of softening images without using negative contrast, or negative clarity is really like the only way I see to do it. But you can see, like, you just start getting this like ghosted image. So I loved being able to add the softness. I loved the grain that came out of it. I think I had more control over it. I liked being able to leverage film stocks. Like, I'd kind of just test them out, but I think that for what it's worth, it's not it. I think this is how I'm going to edit videos, and that's why I was looking through this for the video files, which are just gone. I'm sure I have some import setting incorrect. That, or maybe, let's see, show in Finder. Sorry, I like just had this thought in my head of kind. Why didn't video import? Let's try this again. The source folder selected. Oh, did it? Sorry. It ejects it once it's done with it. shoots. Where's my video at? Oh, I guess I still have Lightroom open. This could be bad. Oh no. Oh no. Stop. Get out of here. Okay. So I guess the short of it is like, why is there no video here? Sorry, this is just highlighting a different issue and I'm just distracted. It's none of these. Where? Sorry, Peter. You can see how my brain works. So yeah, it's still on the table, but it's just not, it's untenable in terms of the process for exporting, I think, is just a little too difficult to wrap my head around. Because I'd export it and I'd post it, I'd get it on my phone and it looked entirely different. I'd put it on the screensaver and I'd see it on the screensaver and it looked nothing like I wanted it to. So then I start questioning, like, what does it actually look like? Which, I don't know, sounds probably overly dramatic, but like this tweaks is just totally something on the side to try and get it close to, like, so this is how it was imported, and this is kind of the end, which I think softens it, and I actually think I made it worse in this exact instance. So there's still a lot of learning to do. I do want to get into this if I can find the videos. I don't know why. This temporary drive. Okay. ARW. I'm confused. These are old clips. Oh, good. Fuck. I mean, you can see how cool that shit was. This is me without a tripod trying to shoot video because I'm an idiot. So I don't know why it's just refusing to import. So I'm like trying to wedge it in a fence basically. Try and get it still. It's like almost comical how bad it is. But yeah, some of this stuff I think could be really good. This actually brings up an interesting point of like, oh, this is entirely different.
This is the last one.
You don't need to hear that. So video was taken. I don't know. Yeah, so the question I'm having mentally in my head is like, how am I going to store this stuff? So if I do 210228, yeah, that's not it. Is this? Yes. I don't know if I need the XML data. Oh, and some of these are old. What is... So yeah, like I'm just trying to like capture random moments, just kind of putting together a bunch of different things. Like, so if I can get the video feature to work in the screensaver, the ultimate goal is to have photos, videos, and then for me to, like, when I finally have time, get back into music production and do more like ambient type stuff. So it's kind of like an end-to-end creation. Yeah, that's the one we already saw. This shit was so cool. You can tell, like, I never bring a tripod with me. It's really stupid. I don't know why. We can mark some of these. Could have sworn I marked. Yes, so I do have some of these. I'll just do a pass real fast to kind of get everything that's worth editing, and then at least from an initial pass, and see where to go from there. I really wanted this shot to turn out, but I don't know if it did. I hate pointing my camera at people. Let's see if we can maybe salvage something. I thought there could have been something to this. Just maybe. Again, mark it yellow. Take a look at it. Yeah, Peter, I mean, the amount of color control in Resolve is unmatched. Like, the fact, like, I think I did it on a stream once of like, because my Capture One was broken, so I was like, I'll just import something into Resolve, not knowing if I could even do that, and just finding the color grade I made is, like, I really liked it. Just because, like, the minute control of, like, you can do things like just taper the saturation at the highlights and the shadows. So you can kind of just keep those clean, then you can... and the big thing about the continuity of everything is just, like, a lot of those curves panels, like, loop. So if you, like, elevate a point on one end, it automatically loops it to the other end because it's on, like, the color spectrum. So then it doesn't create, like, these harsh contrasts. So yeah, Peter, I'm with you, man. Like, it's not built to work at scale is the problem. But I think if they made something that was built on a database like this, where you can just kind of, I don't know, have these edits live within here, that'd be a game changer. I'd switch to that in a heartbeat. I do wish there were more plugins for Capture One that worked better. Like, if Film Nitrate made a Capture One plugin, I'd probably be set. Although I'd still want those extra controls. That would be pretty nice. Yep, I don't mind that. Actually, so I went with my brother, and he honestly took a bitchin' video of this. And I never did. I think this is the only shot I have down the ramp. I just hated this stupid bench. Just threw off the symmetry of everything. I think this shot's been taken like 1,000,000 times at the same time. So for this, it's like trying to capture like the vastness of the sea against this, which I think that does a pretty good job. So go zoom back in. I'm just kind of scanning all of them. And Peter, the other part is like the node logic, I think is super powerful. It took me a long time to get my head around, probably because I'm a little slow. I don't mind that. But it's super powerful, and like how efficient it is in processing video compared to things like like After Effects, just night and day. So I need to import these before I forget. Go. So I guess what's alright is like I have this as a starting point. I can kind of apply the edit to any of these. Like I don't like doing copying and pasting edits, but if it's a variance and the lighting's pretty much identical and the color of the image is identical, it's not that bad. But to me, like the framing is just like the vastness of the sea, and I think that does the best. Like this kind of does okay. It's like kind of like oppositional, but you don't get the sense of scale with this. And I think this gets like kind of messy. I'd probably end up cropping that box out anyways. We're trying to think of ways to take it out. This is something else entirely. This is kind of like a nice clean line originating from the bottom corner. Again, like this, if this wasn't here, I think it'd be much better. But to me, this is kind of just like a speed bump in the image. Like I just don't see a way around it. Yeah, all these textures are just so wild. I don't think I've seen wind this strong on the ocean before. Saw in Iceland on land. It didn't really do much. Just kind of made your life miserable, but yeah. I always try and like sneaky shot other people. You never know. It's all shot from the hip because I don't want to point my camera at anyone. Because I'm soft like that. I don't know. I need to get over it. Maybe it's something to that. So I'll mark that yellow. But again, super appreciative of all the questions. Like, keep them coming. Like, just because I'm doing this right now doesn't mean I won't jump into anything else. I mean, design, sure. You can get into that. Doesn't have to be all explicitly photos. I think I have something like very similar from Big Sur. I don't know why, but I really liked the handicap spot. This is like the best handicap spot in the fucking world. And maybe this is just my brain thought this was kind of funny and interesting, but I'm marking that yellow. Going to different stretch of coastline. Again, so this is shooting down, like, you can see, like, I don't want to mess with blowouts. So if I have my exposure warning on up here, like, it's not hitting it. And I'm shooting pretty close into the sun. So, I mean, that's a usable image, potentially. I think if it was stronger, I just know some of the other stuff I shot is better. So this is like straight into the sun. Like sun's right here. Like there's nominal blowouts if there are any. Again, turning on my exposure warning. You can see it here. No, that is not. Oh. See all the red? It can kind of be mistaken for like, what's it called? It's not halation, is it? Diffraction. Maybe it's chromatic aberration. I don't know my terminology. But you can see, like, there are blowouts. It's savable, but like if you wanted to make a dark image out of this, like you're always gonna have these hot spots, and it's like nuke it as much as you want. Like they're always gonna stand out. So you can try and plan for it, but you just have to know like there are some limitations even if you go 3 stops down. Yeah, something about these. felt like a throwback. Some of these, it's like, what am I thinking with my framing? This probably feels the best. First shot of all of them. I mean, you do these for due diligence, but I mean, a lot of times, you know, I mean, maybe this. I didn't get the grass in focus. So that's a hard, go ahead and delete that. Maybe that, it's just kind of like isolated in its moment. This is where I don't like punching in. Like, this is so avoidable if you just, I just did my due diligence and planned properly. So I'm a firm believer of rule of thirds and like vertical or horizontal kind of alignment. So this kind of shit I wasn't expecting to see at all. I thought this was more Big Sur, and you don't really hear about point rays. So I guess I'm blowing it up. More like sneaky shots of people. Could be something to this. Again, that's not so much shot from the hip, but it's just like, I think I'd probably shoot from a different angle if I went about it properly. Wow, I went way down on this. No. So you can see you can kind of recover it quickly, but you start losing some detail in the shadows. You can see, so if you do, I mean, it's kind of gone already, but like even just bumping up the exposure, it's not totally bringing it back. So that's where you might have some extra work to do in order to get this a little more natural looking. But you can tell like the highlights, I'll turn on the warning, like there's really no highlight blowout, which I think is nice. Because there's no amount of work you can do to get that back. It's gone. All you can do is like lean into it and basically just be like, all right, well, you got a really bright image, and then it's all about like softening the gradation off these highlights. Like, how much can I hide the fact that I blew this shot out? That's what I do at least. I'll still use them. Yeah. Honestly, probably one of the best stretches of coastline. I do kind of like how this wraps around. You can see like the only problem is like the piers over here, which kind of is annoying. You can always take that out. Take out that house probably. Do some initial. But again, you can see like it's kind of flat. Oh, is that the? What's going on here? I have to fix my base preset. It's still doing the wrong grain settings, everything. It's decent. I think this is. Yeah, it's gonna need some love. I'll probably jump to that one first. I think that's probably one of my favorites so far. So I just came back to this, so it's like a there and back sort of path. Slightly different perspective. I kind of had a feeling this was, I don't know why, but I thought it was really interesting. And this bay reminds me of pictures I've seen of like coasts in England. I think it's like the south coast. Although that's like sandstone white, which is way more interesting, but like it's not too bad. So go mark that one, not green, yellow. Went to the beach. I think some of the colors are pretty nice. Like that one. So so that's where the lighthouse is. The lighthouse is like over here, but we were up here. And like that's how I got shit on my lens. It was just like there's so much wind and water. It was literally misting on us on top of this fucking mountain. It was wild. This is a keeper. I'm probably gonna take out this stupid piece of wood because I can. Don't judge me. What? It's got like bow-legged. Oh, this is probably the best one. I don't know. Sometimes I just have questions about what I'm doing. Yeah, this is like, oh, there's backwash. Like there was sand blowing in my face and I couldn't see that well, so I just started snapping pictures. None of them turned out. Can't win them all. This is like a different stretch for sunset. I'm really bummed I didn't take video of this. I really can't explain why. My brother took video of it. Looks way better. Does it way more justice. So if I really can't decide from this view, I'll just like take them into here and kind of evaluate. This is like the grid view where you can select multiple. It took me a long time to find this feature, but these are like almost identical. Same f-stop, same all, just slightly different zoom. Like I don't know why. Sometimes I just take too many pictures. Like this is way better. Because I also know I have some of the rocks that are at sunset that are a little more interesting. Also trying to time it with waves, and it's super windy. Pretty cold. There's like a little arch in the rock. Good, F11, just barely in focus. So this is where if I had my telephoto lens, I think it would have been a little bit better, but I had it. Like it was in my car. And my brother was driving, and I just opted not to bring it, thinking like the coastline's not going to be that great. Like I thought it was kind of just green rolling hills. It'll be beautiful, but it won't be like, oh my god, I want to keep shooting, which it ended up being. So I've learned this lesson before. Like I've been burned by not bringing my tripod. Like fuck, really should have brought it. I was thinking it. I was like, you never know, but I was lazy, kind of tired. So don't do that. Always bring your tripod. Always bring your zoom lenses. That one. I realize like me filtering through these isn't the most interesting, so I'm trying to do this kind of quick, besides my stupid anecdotes about how dumb I can be. Because filtering is kind of whatever process. Yeah, that gradation got me, so I'll mark that. If there's anyone here who has any preference in terms of like which of these kind of initial ones I take a look at, I think some of these, this is kind of wild, this is straight out of the camera. So I stood out there for a long fucking time. My hands are frozen trying to get some of this to work. But like we pulled up and there was a huge set and then it just never came through again. Yeah, Peter, it's like I've like brought my camera so many places and I just look like an idiot carrying my camera around for nothing because there's nothing to shoot. And then, yeah, the one time you really need it, it's just like, yeah, could have brought it, should have brought it, didn't bring it. So I think some of these textures, kind of nice. But again, so this is probably down 2 stops at least. I always oscillate between like 2 and 3 stops. But you can see, like I have blowouts. Boom. So I am limited in terms of like what I can do with this image. Granted, like I don't think I'll ever want to go dark, but if I want to go darker, you'll see like contrast starts developing around the sun. Like it becomes a harsher hotspot. Like this is taking it way too far, but like it's gonna have to be around here, and it's like my area to play with is around here, and how I show these bits. There might even be highlights, blowouts here. Yeah, there's a couple little blowouts, but I mean, all things considered, that's pretty mild. So I'll take it. Okay. Got that marked. My brother wanted a moon picture, so we got a moon picture. I think it's a good first step. Sorry. Long week. I realize it's Monday. So I'll go through. So these are the ones I picked out as potential selects just from our first pass. I think what can be gained from an image like this is pretty nominal. I'm happy to talk about ways of editing that. I think it's kind of interesting when you have like a very kind of blown out image, what you're able to do with it. Maybe some of these, like I still think this is probably one of my favorite stretches. So I think I'll probably start here. And if you have requests, questions, definitely hit me with them. So I have like a general grain setting. I think I've said it a couple times, but I always lose track. I think it's not right because I took all grain off to go into resolve and then apply the grain there, so I wasn't double applying grain. But I haven't quite figured out a grain setting I'm super happy with. I'll get there. Oh, excuse me. So again, like I have like the bottom level, like the black point lifted a little bit as a kind of general starting point, but because of how severely I underexposed this and I can't remember the other part of why that's a problem, but yeah. You don't always have to do that. That's why presets are a problem. Like people try and sell presets, but it's very rarely like a one size fits all type of thing. And something you'll find, like if you underexpose, you kind of have to up the saturation a little bit in order to get it kind of back to life a little bit. I almost never add saturation unless I'm going like down a stop or two. And this is where I wish I had a better lens and could take video, because you could see like basically you could see these just like whatever these wind squalls burst just like lining up down the coastline, which was pretty wild. I didn't even touch white balance. So I think go a little warmer, because usually like the white balance of the camera around the ocean's kind of thrown off because everything's blue and it doesn't quite know how to interpret it. I've gone a little bit greener with my tint as of late. I just think it's a little bit better, but you can see like how flat some of this contrast is. Like there's haze here, and I think that's probably what I'm picking up on is just the haze component that you have to cut through, which I don't usually advocate for pushing and pulling this hard, but when you're kind of fighting the elements, you have to. Why is this going crazy? Let's see. So I'm using a Sony A7R III, and I don't expect to recover all the shadows. I think there's a lot of places where, I mean, I think you can. It's pretty wild with shooting just raw of like what you can recover from the original image. This isn't like the most offensive underexposed image, but you can, if you want to, start recovering some of this stuff. That's one of the reasons I shoot raw. But for me, like, I don't believe in, like, shadows are shadows, and you don't see a ton of information. So that feeds into the way, like, I know I want to edit it. Is I'm okay losing information in the shadows. I'll forgo the shadow information for saving the highlights, because I think that gives me a lot more options when it comes to like how I want to edit the final image. So that's give or take. Like it might not be right for everyone. Stylistically, there's a lot of people who like to kind of pull out the shadows and show a lot of information, and maybe that's not the right approach to kind of stop things down so much. And again, like this is kind of this is me making my own deductions. Like I'm not gonna claim to like know the technical aspects. Like I think there's a lot of people out there who are much more technically savvy than I am, who might take exception to me shooting down 2 or 3 stops for XYZ reasons. And I think recovering information from shadows is kind of the balance. I think that's one of the downsides of it. But again, I do think it's better recovering shadows in digital than it is film, from what I've heard. I don't shoot film, but I think that's the beauty of it. Of like shooting raw is like if you really push comes to shove, like you can really tug on these images pretty far. You can break them for sure, but yeah, you can definitely cause some problems. So because of the underexposure and the haze, I think this is something like I'm gonna really have to get into the curves panel to fix properly. I kind of want to do, I should probably stick with tonality. So even pulling that down, like you can see like that's cutting through the haze. It's like the elevated black point just because it's shooting through all this haze. See, elevating the midtones kind of washes it out. Let's see if we turn on exposure warning, nothing. I don't know. So like I'm not creating blowouts, but you start losing information. So highlight values is always super interesting. So for the people who don't stop down, like a lot of times they're stuck just like nuking their highlights, which I think has a look to it. You can kind of spot it from far away, but I try not to if possible. I still do it for sure, but it's sometimes one of those things you just can't avoid. I don't know where I was going with that. It's Monday. So I'll get into like the tonality of it. So this is where reds are always super interesting to me. And depending on which color you're messing with, like I notice sometimes like if you reduce the greens and the shadows, like that creates a more purple tint, which can then kind of create a little bit more darkness to it, as opposed to green kind of is a little inherently lighter. So you can kind of add some contrast through color by just like messing with the balance a little bit. And I think it's so nominal to the point where it's like you don't really pick up on, like the shadows don't feel purple. I think you start, it's like more blue. And I did so little, like it didn't really elevate the reds so much. It's more about like limiting the greens in the shadows. But again, this is kind of a guessing game with me. Like, I'm very transparent with the fact that, like, I'll grab the wrong point all the time just because in my stupid head, like, it's not consistent with the red, green, and blue channels and how RGB is applied. It seems like it's inverse every time. It's like the meme where it's like you plug in the USB, or you try and plug in, it says wrong, flip it over wrong, and then flip it back to the first way, and it says right. Like, that's pretty much how I go about my color grading. Which is good thing I have a stream and I'm sharing my super valuable insights. But I think if you can cut through all that noise, all my nonsense, maybe there's something useful. I don't know. But again, like with red rocks, blue sky, blue green sea, like adjusting the amounts of different channels and different like highlights and shadows, it starts messing with the colors of things versus it being like a stylistic thing. And I think I've gone on about this. But I think that's kind of the line I'm walking with this. Like, I do want to kind of increase the shadows a little bit by making it a little more purplish. So I think it's kind of getting somewhere. These feel a little flat, like they're kind of like they've lost any sort of range. I don't mind shadows and losing information, but stuff that just looks like blobs kind of gets me a little bothered. So I'll probably do some additional edits to try and edit that. I usually jump into, so this is more like stylistic, because I think this is fairly accurate. I mean, to up this, problem is when you up the shadows, like it just looks like a, I don't know, like a trendy faded aesthetic, which I don't know if that's doing much for my cause. So maybe I go back. So this is where it's like, okay, I tried to recover some of the shadows, but I have like this weird duality of like, it's a bright day, but then there's some darker shadows. And that to me starts feeling fake. My eyes are starting to burn. I'll go 4 eyes. So that's where it's almost like, all right, I came back in and I actually elevated the shadow. So now I'm just trying to lean into like the bright day. Like you're looking towards the sun, like you're not going to see a ton of dark shadows. Peter, glad to hear this is helpful, man. I mean, definitely don't shy away if you have any other questions. But yeah, like between all the rambling, I'm always happy to hear that there's something somewhat valuable to anyone out there. I probably spent more time than I should have kind of churning on this stuff and doing things the wrong way for a while. So if I can keep anyone else from doing that, I think that's what I'm after. This is getting somewhere interesting. The reds. So the reds are in the shadows. You have the red rocks, which is more like the mid-tone. So it's kind of like color contrast, kind of like narrowing things in a little bit. I do wonder, like you're looking towards the sun. I don't know. Yeah, like I have these expectations sometimes of like, oh, like you want it to be like kind of yellow, but not really. Like this doesn't. This looks like shit. I mean, sometimes you'll find like going to like the blues helps recover some of this, the sea, but I don't really want to get into that game with this. I'm going to turn it off for now. And then highlights, I think green or blue is probably what I was envisioning. I tend to go more green these days. Again, this is kind of just personal taste. And then master, I'll just again kind of circle I'll take a lap. I don't know what I'm looking for at this point. I'm just kind of seeing if there's anything that can be done to kind of tie it together. Sometimes you can get some like weird disjointed color palettes, and this can kind of help. You don't want to be like relying on it to save everything, but if it's just kind of like a little bit of like bridging the gap between the different color contrasts, it can definitely help sometimes. And I haven't even touched the color editor. Again, I think I always harp on this, like I'm kind of apprehensive about doing too much. I do think it becomes more necessary with stopping down. You kind of have to recreate a lot of the information that you're losing by stopping it down. So it's, again, it's kind of like recoverable information and non-recoverable. Like I think there's ways of recovering lost information from shadows. It's kind of like you got to do a little bit more legwork with like bringing out saturation, adding contrast where it kind of needs to be. Again, like this is starting to look like washed out. Like through here, like this looks washed out. So I might start doing some correction. So now that I'm doing a full desktop stream, you can see where my cursor is. So the hand doesn't get bigger. I mean, you can see where that is, but like this, I think is problematic. Like that looks hazy. Kind of want to pull that down a little bit, make that darker, but then this is getting too dark. So this is where you can just like go sideways. Like once you go below 45 degrees, like you're fucking with some things you probably got to be pretty careful with. Because I'm simultaneously like trying to bring this up and bring this down, and like the tonality difference is so narrow. So that's where I have this guy hidden. So I'll start doing some like, again, used to be able to make this bigger. I don't know why. They limited it, but they did. So like, there just might not be a way to do it with this. It may need to be more of a, like this just looks chunky and weird and wrong. Again, like I might just be over ambitious trying to save all of this just because of like the nature of this day. Like there's so much haze. So another technique could be empty, do, I don't know, let's do like a linear gradient. I don't do this a lot, so I actually have no idea how well this is going to work. This is just an idea of like, as you're getting further back in space, it applies more of the gradient to it. So this is just to show the mask. You can toggle that with M. So, so let's see if I up the contrast. You can kind of see it's cutting through it. And my rule of thumb for these sort of adjustment layers is not to do like global parameters too much. Like contrast is a global parameter that I think you can kind of get away with. Brightness, or no, I have that backwards. Do the global parameters, don't do the local. So if you get down to like some of this stuff, it's not doing it so much because it's kind of bright, but or no, I had it right the first time. Don't do like exposure. That's right. You can see like it's bringing everything down. So although it's a gradated, it's on a gradation, doing like wholesale broad application of like an effect is more obvious. I think if you do more narrow focus, like, okay, I know when I go through here, like I need to like cut through the haze, which is in the blacks and the shadows. So you can see like it's definitely helping, but it's not like overbearing. Whereas like if you start doing some of these other things, like again, contrast is one of the surefire ways. You can go into like clarity and structure. Clarity probably will get you there pretty quickly, but to me, the image gets crunchy. So I just generally try and stay away from that. But yeah. So that's kind of a first pass. Like, I think this is one of those difficult images that's gonna need a couple takes. So I'll just come through and I'll do like a duplicate, and for better or worse, like I'll just start over. Like I do every image individually, and there's some things you just learn along the way of just like resetting, and some of it's like because I'm so much on feel, like I'll land somewhere else entirely. Just in terms like maybe the way I'm applying different colors, I jump to something else first and end up with like something that feels different. It's just, I don't know, like if you go into it with like I'm just gonna like bang out an edit, like I think I've done it and I see a lot of stuff in my screensaver that drives me nuts and I fucking hate it. So I don't advocate for that. I advise, I've gained a lot of perspective and knowledge by not being scared to start over and bombing edits. Like and sometimes like you'll find like you won't find. I guess like sometimes if I'm in the selects folder, you'll see like 8 different variants of the same ones. I think I've joked about it. I think the most is one with like 13 variants, and like I hate them all. I know there's something good in there, and I'm not hitting it. And I think that's where this is. This feels too contrasty. It feels too green. Oh, that's fucking the adjustment later. Like there's just a lot of stuff that I don't think is quite right. Like even just upping that, but then like the orange feels too saturated. There's just so much stuff like in terms of how things are calculated or computed. Like it feels heavy-handed is the problem I have with it right now. And I think like nuking contrast, maybe that's gonna help. Upping brightness, I think maybe. I guess the short of it is just not being too attached to any one edit. I think there's some edits where I've made where it's like I'm trying to like chase that dragon and get that back. There's some edits in Lightroom. There's one of a lifeguard tower that I cannot replicate in Capture One. Like the color palette harmony is just like, I don't know what I was on that day, how many beers I had, how many edibles I had. Like I just can't do it. I've got about 10 edits. I'm gonna like hold out till I can. I just don't know what the problem is. I've done largely the same stuff, but it's just doesn't click. I don't know. It happens. So that's the beauty of digital, is like this stuff can live on. Like I'm still editing stuff from 2016. And the image is never going to go out of style. It's just like how I edit it that can evolve with me. And it can be a problem because I can just always chase it and try and recreate it. But I don't know. You can always just progress in your catalog can grow with you as long as you're not too afraid of like revisiting things. Like if I learn a new technique and I look back at an image that doesn't leverage that technique, I'll just go back to it. I have my bomb button on my Stream Deck. I'll just start over. Great variant, start over. It just, I don't know. That's how you grow. And then once you kind of have both and you can kind of compare them, I should probably just show it. So if I go to my selects folder, so yellow will have all the different variants. Actually, I'll take all filters off. You'll start seeing a lot of like duplicate images here. Like like this, I mean, this is just 3, but like you can see like the range of where it goes, and like I don't know what I was thinking on this one. I think this is one of the first ones, but just like the balance wasn't quite right. It just felt too like that faded look, which I don't really like. So that's something where I learned like, okay, because I'm limiting the black point, like some of my images, if I'm not paying attention, are gonna look faded more than I want them to. Like I don't want them to have a black point, but I don't want them to look like the low end is just condensed into this just like flat kind of androgynous. I don't know what the right word is, but you see like this one, 9. Oh no, 8. Squeezed in a different Dune picture. Fuck. But you see like they all kind of take different approaches in some way, but like this is one where I know there's something good about it. I'd love to get it out in the world, as I think it's or I'd love to share it at least, but there's different things that I think are working and not working. I think like different color balances, different like how bright it is. I think this is definitely the closest one, which is why it's first right now. So I'll also start like moving things up and down, like wow, I haven't seen it struggle that bad. I mean, this isn't too bad. I'm not mad at this. It's bright, it conveys the moment pretty well, but and there's kind of like a neutral shadow. Highlights are kind of blown out and soft. I don't know. I'm not mad at it coming at it with fresh eyes, but clearly I didn't think I had it right. So that's where I get in trouble. Like I tried to do a stream where I went like import to posting on Instagram, and I think I hated the image by the time I like looked at it the next morning. I was like, oh, I fucked that up. Like maybe I shouldn't do that. Because it's, I don't know, your eye always adjusts to different things, and like if I have like a dark shoot and I get too accustomed to those types of images, like I'm gonna be biased towards one edit or the other. Whereas if I come at it fresh from a different day, it looks a lot different. I'm not doing a great job of proving my point right now. At most seeing like 3 edits. Fuck. Yeah. There were more. There's a lot more in Lightroom. But apparently like half my catalog's gone. I don't know. I'm like so committed to Capture One at this point, I don't think it's gonna be a problem. Yeah, sidetrack. Again, not sure if that's useful, but and I'm trying to like keep track of some of this stuff. Props to, I think there's 4 people here who are making it through all of this fucking rambling and tangents and all that stuff. I told someone they deserve a medal for making it through all this stuff. Yeah, like I need to have shorter clips that are like to the point, because I think it's probably interesting for some people to see like end to end and me kind of talk out what I'm doing, but I think there's a lot of people who just want like I want to learn how to do this. How can I do that? It's like, okay, well, this is how you do it. Not like, hey, well, let me tell you about this first and then swear at like all the things I'm fucking up because I don't remember all my shortcuts and things aren't what they're supposed to be. Like, I'm super appreciative of everyone who's here. And I know these streams are rough. Like, I don't know if anyone's here from the beginning, but I think the first like 5 minutes were on mute. So like, and the first 5 minutes were me like trying to import images into Capture One and just struggling with the dialogue. Like, it's a live look in. Like, I don't know. There might be some people who think I know what I'm doing, but I'm fucking winging it. I don't know. I don't mind admitting that. There's a lot of people who want to appear like they know everything, but I'm confident that's not me. I should know more for how long I've been doing this. I'll say that. But oh, you're so dumb. Why would you put this? So I have this like rule of thirds overlay in my viewport, and I still just like, I know I want the final images to always adhere to that, but I just never like have the foresight to shoot with it. You know what? Maybe that's not fair. Maybe I just picked the image that wasn't on the rule of thirds, which is also interesting. Wow. How's that horizon line? I mean, that's pretty close to, so I don't have these like midpoint grid lines. Okay, so there I was paying attention. But so I have this, but I don't have this rock, which I think is an interesting focal point. But I do have this pile of wood along the rule of thirds. Stop. But again, just like how this is composed, this is like, I think in the moment, this felt like it was more important to have on a grid and like structured properly in frame. But like looking at it now, it's like, it's not that important. So that's, yep, trying to get that rock in center. So this might actually be better. Actually, flat horizon line. All right, I just need to like edit the photo. I do want to mark that. Okay. So this is where like I took it bright, but like I don't think this is a bright moment. Like this is closer to sunset. So I might kind of make a U-turn on this where I'm going generally darker. Don't usually, whatever this one does, I don't do it a lot. Very scientific. That's not. It's not too far off. I don't know if it's the Sony sensor, but you can see like all the blue kind of tonality that I'm already cutting through. Yeah, see, that's neither of those are right. So sometimes you just kind of have to stretch both sides of it. But to me, this is more accurate to the moment as I remember it, because like this is right around the time I was shooting this or this. This is just pointed at the sun. That's why it picks up so much of the coloration. So it's funny, like looking at this other images, this one seems kind of innocuous, but you see like, again, like going back and forth, like I'm going back to the brightness a little bit because this is kind of like the bulk of the midtones, and I think I was maybe getting a little too dark. So it's kind of, this is another one of those guess and check sort of moments. And again, with like going dark, like I don't think I have any information here whatsoever. Like, yeah, that's gone. So I'm personally, I've gotten to a point where I'm okay with that. I'd rather like I want that to be seen, but I don't need you to see all of like the side of the rock. Like that's not offering visual interest to me. So that's where it's like, okay, you kind of just like pick your battles. Again, like if I really wanted to, like I can just up the shadows and I have all my information there, but to me, that's not so much what I'm after. And again, like this highlight reduction is kind of what happens by default. I don't know if I upped it or not in this one. I kind of don't mind it, but I'm trying to get to a point where I don't need to touch the high dynamic range. I'm literally trying to do as little as possible to these images and get them to where I want. So, same with the red midpoint. This will kind of limit it a little bit. So this is kind of increasing like the warm tonality through the highlights. That kind of helps with the sunset. Just kind of offset a little bit with like adding green into the highlight. I don't know why, but I found that that kind of offers a nice balance to it. Because I think the opposite being purple, which is sort of tangential to red, so like you can kind of get in like runaway color palettes. I don't particularly like that very much. Well, maybe a little bit closer. I feel like my color theory teacher would be proud. Although I had to like paint color swatches, and I like borrowed half of them. You had to like mix paint and get the right color, but people would just like all get together and just paint large enough swatches of whatever the exact color was, so they could share it with other people, so they didn't have to do it all. Pretty good. Maybe I would have been better off and learned this earlier if I didn't fucking steal other people's swatches, but what are you gonna do? It's feeling a little chunky, like it's too much contrast. I don't know what color's bothering me right now. I think the warmness feels right. The value feels right, but it just feels chunky. I don't know why. Like the fact that this is a little bit more where I want it. Maybe the color balance would kind of help unify this a little bit. See, this is really tempting. I've done a couple images where I've really pushed the shadows to like I've applied colors to the shadows like this. I see a lot of people do it. I like it when other people do it, but I don't like it when I do it. It always looks weird. So this might end up being one of those ones where I just kind of get weird with it. Like adding a little bit of offset with like the cooler tones in the midtones. So I'm like upping the warmth in the shadows, which I think plays into the warmer tones, but then I could probably just go right back. I do think it needs to go back warmer. Yeah, but see, this just feels chunky. Like I know I don't want information there, but it just feels heavy for everything else. So this is where I'm like just pulling that up to see if that fixes it. I've got contrast pretty low. Figure out why. Oh, it's this. That helps. Yeah. Better. I never finished this. This is like master. Again, just unifying things a little bit. This is just purely on high at this point. You can see how much, why it's changing so much as it goes bluer. And there's sometimes like with, if I nuke this down, like I've done all this effort to make it warmer, I'll get to the master and I'll find like, actually if I kind of even it out and I don't go so far, maybe that's the best. And for me, it's like, it's almost everything. It's like I do it with design too, of like I do things to the extreme. It's like huge fucking type. First place I go. You'd think I would learn by now, but I have not at all. I do it all the time. And I'm like, I actually didn't need to be that big. Who knew? So I think that's kind of what this is like, oh, I want a warm image, like maybe I don't need to go like 10,000% hard on it. You can kind of dial it back. So there's like the warm tonalities in there, but it's ultimately kind of neutralized and offset by some of this. Then you can always go back and just kind of like play with the amount of blue that's basically neutralizing everything. This horizon still looks crooked. I thought it was going to go the other way. Get the fuck out of here. Huh? Wait. Oh, fuck you. Well, straight as it's going to get. Let's see. Well, that's not what I want. Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I'm tempted to call this decent at a first pass. I mean, sometimes I come in here and just like push this a little bit. I know it's kind of making bad things happen. You can see like up here, like how imbalanced those values really are. And I don't know if that's necessarily something I should advocate. Excuse me. But sometimes you test those things and you can kind of get away with it. You never know. One thing I do miss about Lightroom is that they had like the mode. Actually, that's on my screen. That's embarrassing. They have the mode where you can just like create high levels of contrast and you can see all the spots on your lens a lot easier. I don't think there is a way to do that in this, but I could be wrong. So yeah, as like a first pass, I'm kind of happy with that. Like again, I think it's like a bias of the Sony camera. I think this feels pretty honest. To start, I'm not ready to like mark it green like it's good, but yeah, it's a start. You know, maybe I'll do. Well, actually, the one thing I didn't like is the grain settings. Too heavy. So like ISO 320. This is where like if you have universal grain settings that you apply, like just keep an eye on the ISO. Because if you just apply it how you normally do, sometimes like, I mean, it's a vibe, I suppose, but you probably want to like dial it back a little bit if there's natural grain. I don't do any sharpening. I actually turned off noise reduction. I don't know if that's a great thing. Why can't I turn it on? I don't know. Spot removal? Dust? What is this? Oh. There you go. Is that on my, that's on my screen. There's like a spot right there. Huh. Huh? Did that do anything? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know these things. I'm kind of curious about this one. See what I can do. So again, you can see like the grain, like this is 320 again. Well, this is the wrong grain settings to start with. This is more of where like I think my preference is going across the board. It's larger, but it's not like, I don't know, it's not too overbearing. So again, first step for me is like, let's just lower the contrast. So this way you can kind of control where the contrast happens. Jeez. This is one, like, if you look at your histogram and like the world this is occupying is like, it's so narrow. And I think I need a ticket for capture 1 to make high dynamic range relative to the histogram, or I have like an option to toggle it so it's like it's relative to what your image is. So highlights is not always going to be like this top quarter of your histogram. It's going to be like maybe that shifts lower down relative to like where your displacement of pixels are. Seems like a decent idea, but I've yet to see it in build. Ah, man, see, that's kind of interesting. Just blowing it out. That's kind of interesting too. This one's gonna have an identity crisis for sure. So Capture One's grain settings compared to Lightroom. So I think they've been adding more and more. They have this fine grain that really, I mean, it's not bad. Yeah, apparently there's all sorts of like algorithms in terms of like how it's applied. Like they have a huge long article about oh, the way we calculate our grain, like it's like film in terms of like the um like it's applied differently at different values. So in the highlights, the bright highlights and the dark, I can't remember which one it is, but like one of them, it doesn't apply a ton of grain. I think it's the shadows. Like it has some curve in terms of like, okay, the grain doesn't appear as much in the shadows. Although that kind of looks like bullshit to me because you kind of see a lot here. So if I turn this off, see this. I mean, this is 320 ISO, but yeah, I mean, this is their fine grain cranked up to 100. Like, I don't think anyone should ever do that. Harsh grain is kind of like 16 millimeter type, and like, there's part of me that almost wants to go with this. I tend to like the harsher grain, but like a more subdued application. And I'm honestly not sure if like this isn't where I should be heading. I'm really midway through figuring this out. Tabular grain, you can see this looks like Photoshop grain, if I'm being entirely honest. And it looks very flatly applied. Not terrible. It's like with all these, like it's pretty nominal, the difference between them. I should probably take some time and look at, let's see, online hub. What do you got? Interesting, they made tooltips. Silver grain, impact slider, fine grain. I don't know who. That's a lot of grain settings. They used to have something where it told you. Oh, we're gonna change fine. I know they used to explain like their rationale behind how it was applied, but they don't seem to do that anymore. Gron. No, not Gron. Grain. Photorealistic way. This is what I've seen before. So they go into some length talking about like how it mimics certain things generated by an algorithm. But so this is going back to Capture 1.8. Like they just don't update this shit. And if this is what their photorealistic grain looks like pass. Hard pass. It's a style, but like that's doesn't look like film to me. This looks more like film. I don't know what that is. But you see, like they only had 5, but they've got 6. I think they added soft grain. Is that the new one? No. Tabular grain, harsh grain. I don't know. They added something. But that's actually one of the things I liked better about Lightroom was the grain. I felt like you were able to get a more photo. It was more like actual film grain. I think it had like a destructive nature to it, where this just feels like it's kind of just applied on top. I do wonder if I have selects, photos, wallpaper archive. Let's go way back. No. I mean, I think this is Lightroom. God, these edits are so bad. I think this is Lightroom grain. When's this from? 2018. This is definitely Lightroom grain. I mean, this feels pretty nice through here. Like my color grade's wrong. You can see this green banding that I apparently slept on. Oh, this goes back. But you can see like it's over applied here. But if it's done properly, like I think it looks pretty good. Problem is like there's so many different things wrong with my color edit, my edits in these, where grain's kind of like an afterthought. Yeah, I guess it's there. But like I think for me, like I'm going closer towards like if I'm going like the film emulation route, like I'm probably on like the pendulum swinging to the far side of like more noticeable grain. And I've actually had someone call me out. I got sent this like 3D render and I was just bored and I was just learning all my film emulation stuff and I was like, let me like send it back with some of my film emulation stuff on it, and they like called out exactly what it was. It's a little disheartening because like my eye's not fully there yet in terms of understanding what's too much, what's too little, and I think that's like over time you just learn how to be subtle. Like it's like if you think about, I mean, I'll speak from personal experience, but like when I first got Photoshop, it was just like, oh my God, like I can do all this stuff. And like, what's the best way to make an image better? Like do everything to it, like lens flare, saturation. Like I have some stuff from like, I don't know, college years where it was just, it was just like, let's turn everything up to 11. And I still do it. Like, it's just, this is again, personal, like how I go through getting new tools and learning new techniques is like, I go too far. And then I slowly learn like, okay, that went too far. Why? And then understand like, okay, that setting's like out of control. You got to dial that back. And then slowly and slowly and slowly, like you find your way back to the original, but you're leveraging the best of that tool. Like you're adding grain in a way that doesn't inhibit it, doesn't distract, doesn't destroy, doesn't feel fake. A lot of like the feel things, I think, is something you just can only get with time. That's why, like, again, like if you watch tutorials or live streams, like, I mean, it's good to be aware of it, but just know that like it's going to take time to kind of adjust your eye for this stuff. And that's why I think I've gotten to be okay with like sharing all this stuff. Like I used to be super tight-lipped with everything of like, I don't want people to like copy me. It's like you can tell like someone all these different techniques and it's still going to take like the practice and the eye to do it. And me telling him technically what something is, like it's not going to let them replicate my image. It might get them closer and help them understand of like how to reverse engineer it, but that'll make them hopefully better, and then they'll kind of make it their own thing. That's at least what I'm hoping. Like, I hope no one just, I mean, feel free to like copy what I'm doing. Like I don't care. I don't own any of this. I'm sure there's 1,000 people who have done this before me. But yeah, that's why I was always scared about like everything. Like I'd never send raw, or like I'd never send like the edited files with all the edits baked in. I won't do that. But like showing this control panel, like you'd never catch me doing that for like 3-4 years. So now it's like you can either give it to them and make it easy for them so they can like focus on doing something their own, or you can just let people try and figure it out and waste their time. Not waste their time. I'd rather people just like, that's like the whole no ISO thing. It's just like, or no ISO, whatever you want to call it. Like, just creative authenticity. Like, there's so much shit out there. Everything's been done, but just like, do your own fucking thing is what I advocate for. Not to go on a random tangent, but I guess it's probably too late. If this is your first time watching the stream, you probably are catching on to the fact that I can just ramble with the best of them. Sorry, I'm just looking down here, and this is really bothering me. Because it's like your focus should be here. Definitely not here. Like, I'm going to go ahead and do this right now. Oh, I went a little sideways on that. Like, that's purely distraction. And see, like, their healing tool's pretty good. Part of me wants to take this whole wave out, but that's like, you're dealing with gradations on this side. I mean, let's see if I can do a quick pass. Oh, God. I mean, it almost looks real. Kind of. I mean, you can see the gaps in it. Where's the healing tool? Ask. So that's where it's being applied. But that's just like a super fast pass. Like, I just need to tack that on. And so, I mean, I can do a whole thing on how you should properly heal. That's, okay, that's sloppy. It's like right through here. Oh. So hide and heal, it's like H and Control H. Yeah. And this spot looks a little egregious, but I mean, if you step back, like that highlight's gone. I may not get rid of it, but to me, it's kind of distracting. I don't know, we'll see. Well, appreciate you appreciating it. I mean, yeah, it's like there's no right way to do things, no wrong way to do things. It's just, I don't know. I had a whole kick for a while of just getting really frustrated with people chasing trends and like seeing something get traction. Like, I want to do that. And it was like the whole, like Iceland. Iceland was like the perfect example of like geotagging and people wanting to just like recreate shots, not not think for themselves, not like do their own thing. It was like, damn, that place is beautiful. That exact shot is what I want to go. And it was like, was it Kier Lincolnfall? Oh, Lincolnfall. Oh, that's so bad. Nope. Shit. I don't know. It's not anime. Iceland waterfall. It'll be one of 3 images, I'm sure. Here, that's first one. How do you spell it? How do you spell it? No one? It's funny. This is like exactly how I named my folder and my, what's it called? Oh, come on. It's Kierlingenfall, right? Oh, State Department. Am I gonna get put on some list now? The fuck? The ultimate guide. Oh, it's, yeah, whatever, Kirkshufeld. I can't speak Icelandic. Or even like say shit phonetically. Yeah, this shot. Everyone's got it. Like, let's for joke shit see how many people got something similar. Granted, oh, it's showing the exact one. This is more representative. It's like when I went there, like I went and took the picture and I was so goddamn embarrassed. I was like, this is almost shameful. I'm not proud of this right now. Where was I going with this tirade? But it's like people just lining up to recreate shots, and it's like, is that what you want to do? Like, there's no like creative vision really being applied here. You're just like, this is the pull out. This is where you stop to go hike to it right outside the car, and I'm gonna get the shot with the waterfall and the mountain in the background. And I took a shot. I still have it, I think, somewhere, but just kind of like watch people come and go, and it was super interesting. And but again, like everyone has their own thing with photography, and like maybe they just wanted that shot that they really like to hang on their wall, and like fucking far be it for me to judge anyone for wanting to do that. Like I get on my high horse about things sometimes, but really at the end of the day, it's like to each their own. Like if your thing is like mimicking what other people are doing, like I hope you become the best at it. But I don't think that's where the most interesting work's created. It's like this whole backlash of like if you, I guess like things that are unique don't trend as quickly, which is kind of sad. And it's like apparently I've come to learn like Instagram's algorithm like tags your images and it'll feed it to people who like images that are visually similar. So it's like a sunset with certain color palettes and certain characteristics like will be fed to people who like sunset images with such and such characteristics. Like fucking wild to me. But that's when people like they'd post something like trendy and they'd see a ton of followers and like, oh well, shit, like let me do that. Or like I've been guilty of it. I've definitely done it. I wanted photography to be a thing more than it was, and I thought chasing trends was the way to do it. And it got me some traction, but I just hated shit I posted and I felt obligated to not post what I wanted to post. So it's I mean, this is like the no ISO manifesto in a nutshell, but it's like the algorithm creates this sort of like pressure for conformity instead of just being like this tool to enable like greater discovery and like broadening your horizons and greater inspirations. It's like I feel I need to fall in line with what's popular, otherwise like I'm not doing it right unless I'm fucking this edit up. So yeah, that's my long spiel about that, but I'm probably in the minority with that, and that's okay. I don't think it's like any original thought. It's just kind of one I've stuck to. This is where, I mean, the blowout's a little reduced. Does it show? It does show it. So the blowout is, you can control the settings in focus, mask, exposure. So you can control like the exposure warning. So anything over 252, whatever. I don't know the units, whatever the value. That's where it shows up. Or in the shadows where you have like dark spots. Basically, it equates to like tonal flat spots. Like anything under those, it's pretty hard to perceive the difference. So you can kind of like get warnings of different things. I don't know. See, like as I was talking, I've kind of botched some of this. I do like that it's kind of neutral through there, but there's something nice just about the raw colors. Like, yeah, the balance is achieved, but I don't know if that's helping or hurting at this point. So this is where I might, nope, not go full screen. Not at all. Make an edit, a duplicate. So I know something in my back pocket, and this isn't done either, is the thing. Like, I feel like I'm kind of, oh, I say I'm kind of jumping the shark. I make myself laugh with my stupid jokes. I'm sorry. Anyone else has to hear this. It's like if you ever watch Trailer Park Boys, they all like the Rickyisms where he gets them just wrong. It's like some of my favorite shit. Like, and I'll drop this stuff in meetings to see if anyone's actually paying attention. It's a lot of fun. Just say like, yeah, you know, if we do this, we can get 2 birds stoned at once. Just like a quiet, but like no one ever says anything. Or it's like, yeah, it's just water under the fridge at this point. Don't worry about it. I'm an idiot, in case that's not obvious. I can crack myself up all day. And I don't expect anyone to find it remotely entertaining. So we're gonna bomb this. All right, so wrong grain again, gotta fix this. So I think it never hurts to have like an objective, like when you're going into these images of, all right, I'm starting with a warm image. These are the characteristics I want to keep. This is the feeling I want to get. Like for me, everything's like my eye, how I edit, and the subsequent result is all about feeling. That's why there's rarely anything super technical about my work. This is why I don't do series. Like I've tried it, I'm not good at it. So this is like I'm even going warmer with the temperature. I feel like I'm already losing. So I'm going, like you can see the green through here, 37, 28. But is the balance the same? Because I think it's this guy. Yeah. You can see I'm trying to just, my objective with that is not having pure blacks, and I think I'm still achieving that, but I'm allowing for more dynamic range. Like it doesn't feel like faded out too much, which isn't always a bad thing, but I think with this one, I'd like to keep it a little more, I don't know, a little more honest to the original. Like that was kind of my goal, was this doesn't feel bad, but like maybe let's just kind of adjust the contrast a little bit and see what we can do with some of the color balance. And see, like I'm immediately going here. And I think that's where I went last time. Yeah, exactly where I went. So this is where like, I almost don't want to stop it. I don't want to fuck with that because that's going to get me down the same road again. So I'll just let that be. Like if I want to, I know I want to lean into the warmer tones, like having elevated like red tones is a big part of that. So avoid that. I'm definitely going to get something different this time. See, like even bringing in some of these greens, like, so you'll see a lot of people do like blue highlights, which I think is on like a very like lopsided warm edit, like a sunset edit, or like just a bright day. That immediately adds some color contrast, some balance, and I don't know. I think it helps because I think like technically people know, like maybe not technically, but like from a feeling perspective, they know like you can't just like hammer this one way or the other and expect it to come out with a great result. Like I think even people who are, well, I don't want to make that's kind of a bad statement, but I think a lot of people would see this and think like, okay, this isn't quite what I'm looking for. Like it is warm. I think there's some people who would think that's okay. More power to them again. That's just not me. I think the way that the color is applied, it applies too much red saturation throughout, and I don't think that's where we should be heading. So again, like with warm images, the blue balance is super important. No, why is it? It's going green if I reduce it. Why? You see like opposite of green is purple, magenta, whatever you want to call it. We're already in different territory. We haven't even touched color balance yet. Honestly, somewhere around here. Yeah, it's not bad. So sometimes like I forget to do the value, then I'll come back in and do it while I'm doing colors, which probably isn't advised. And again, like I'm already like going back over here, but I'm finding a different way to do the same thing of just negating this heavy one-sided color balance. I don't know if that's super helpful. Honestly, like I like these colors more. I think that's just the tint. I'm not gonna do it. Oh. Yeah, that's not the way to do it. That's not it either. This is what I was talking about. Sometimes people do blue on a warm image. I think the sun's just like, it's so soft and kind of highlights are too broad. It's like almost like green kind of becomes that offset. I don't know. I can't explain that very well. If you go yellow, like it's kind of just leans into it, but if you just like create a little color contrast in there, and like it doesn't register as blue or green, really. Like I think some of the fringe you can kind of see it, but I mean, there you can definitely see it. But I think this starts looking like a technique that some people, you'll start to see some people employ. I don't know if I want to go that far. But this kind of, I don't know, this is boring. What you see is like, as I mess with the brightness, it's messing with the color balance. Like you can see there's way too much red through here because that's not what I planned for. So this might be a wash just on that behalf of like, I'm starting to realize now, like it's just kind of, it's very similar, but it's just not, it's, I don't know. It's a boring exposure for this. Where am I going? I lost track of time. I have no idea. 7? 2 hours and change? Yeah, not bad. If that's one, I'm just not gonna. Yeah, it's just, there's things I like about each, but there's still the thought that there's something in the original which is that. I mean, I kind of knew this was going to be a problematic one. I'll just bomb that so it's fresh. Man, I'd love to get into resolve. It's getting kind of late. I haven't even eaten dinner yet. Outside of the couple beers I've had. Oh my god. Sorry, just notifications. Let's see. I wonder if I kind of want to do one video. Yeah. Probably not going to finish it, but I can kind of show some of the color editing abilities of DaVinci Resolve that I like. Do I don't know. If there's anyone here who wants to see this or not see this. I do. No. New project. Media pool. Let's see. Movies. Nope. Nope. Yep. Video. So I think this. Go edit. I need to add this to the media pool. I did. So we can go to color. So this is where have my power grades with the Z because I'm stupid. So this is where this is basically what I would do for stills and go through this process. Turn the audio off. So you can see like the grains being applied. I do have an adjustment, so don't do that. Don't do that again. Show compound node. So this is where I'd get into like exposure. I try and there's a lot of best practices I slowly started learning, looking at different videos online, in terms of how to do things. The color wheels honestly are like a total mystery to me. And why certain things are in certain places just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Highlights. Shadows. Color boost. Oh. Go. Color. So this is what I think is most interesting. So these curves are fascinating. Hue versus hue. So again, you can control just like the hue of, so you can modify the hues so it's kind of continuous, and like once you get into like more yellow hues, it's not like this jarring, like sometimes if you get into selective color, HSL, like if you get into some of this stuff and you start tugging colors, like this is a very terrible example of it, but you could see like the banding occurs through here where it's like it stops getting off orange onto different colors. This helps mitigate that a little bit. This is not the best example. There's actually not a ton I want to do with this. See, like you mess with this color of the sea, but like I don't think this is what I want to get into. You can see all the different options. So hue versus saturation, hue versus luminance, saturation versus saturation. So this is, I've seen a lot of people do this, and I don't know how I feel about it. But you can just kind of dump the saturation when it comes to the very highest points. So they'll stay pretty neutral, which I tend to prefer. I've seen people do it, and I kind of realize, like, yeah, I actually wouldn't mind that. Luminance versus saturation. No, saturation versus saturation. Where we're at, right? Yeah. Hue versus saturation. So you can just like blast the reds if you really want to. So you can see it wraps. That's basically what I was saying earlier. I was doing a terrible job explaining it. This is like your traditional curves. It's wild, like it does it in real time. Like I don't think After Effects could hang with this kind of thing. Just wild. This is where I have not been good. I forget how to do a tracker. Active mode. What? Oh no. This is not the way I usually do it. Edit. Stabilization. Perspective. Taking its time with this one. Yeah, I gotta back that red down quite a bit. See how it did. Not bad. Oh, little movement. This is where I think camera lock. This is where like it starts punching in a lot. Oh, that's way more than I expected. It'll be pretty much perfect. Still see a little shake. Is it warping it? Like this is basically the effect I want, but you can see, like, look at it warble through here. Like that's not okay. I don't know if I want perspective shifting. I think that's just too aggressive. But you also don't want that wobble. Ugh, still a little bit. So I think that's at least better. It's at least not having this like nauseating bounce to it, which I can live with. Where is it? Don't need that, it's so saturated. Saturation's kind of good. It's really the exposure. And I only added this saturation node just because I've seen a lot of that. I don't personally think it needs that. I think that could be added in with the color. But I do believe like this order, like color after exposure is pretty important. Get into, I like to add a little bit of red. And like, this is where it's like, the controls are so fine. Everything else from like Capture One and Lightroom, everything is kind of, like it's easy to just like crank it, but like I'm moving a lot in order to get this. And I think it's on like a ramp where it's not like a one-to-one. So it's like the very like subtle details, like you can do quite a bit of mouse movement, but once you get into like stylistic and adding a ton, it just kind of ramps up. So I can bypass all, so that's kind of the original. Let's see, edit. I do think the contrast can come down a little bit. Going a little green with the tint, coming back to that temperature. Again, coming back up. Yeah, I think this green through here is hue versus hue. Why is it not? Yo, what? That is not it, I can tell you that. Stop. Stop. So this grade's kind of like step one. I don't know if that grass is, it's pretty accurate. It feels a little yellowish. Yeah, you can see. So sometimes like with these curves, you kind of need to offset it a little bit, like kind of like balance it out, because you see like it's trying to compensate from the shifting greens by like lifting all of these, so like these are above kind of like their natural color, so you could, like, the grass is becoming yellow, but if we want to bring it back, we kind of just pull it down a little bit. It kind of just does this little balancing act, which I think works well. So that's just the exposure. Halation, so if you're not familiar, this is just affecting the highlights. Probably won't see a ton of it. So the kind of common technique is to only apply it to the brightest highlights, and you can kind of see it here. Oh, that's because it's on link. Always turn link off when you're doing this. Although it's not doing anything. Great. Good job. The idea being, like, around the highlights with like whatever in the film process, like there tends to be some bleed over of red off of the highlights. This probably isn't the best image to show it. Actually, no, it's not. Yeah, sometimes you have to narrow it down to certain hues. So this is all the stuff, like, I just kept learning, is like when you apply it to more red images, you start getting some fringing in terms of like how that blur is being applied. It just kind of gets messy. So yeah, halation's like, that's something like you have to do by image. Like there's no way to like one size fits all. I think some people are trying it and are probably getting some pretty good stuff out of it, and I'm sure there's more parameters and qualifiers you can add to it to make sure that it is staying consistent. But yeah, it's tough. Like you have to go through and do each one. I have so much respect for colorists. I'm doing like such a like novice job. I don't know what I'm doing, if I'm being entirely honest. This. So you can go into this like Shift H, which just basically shows what's being applied. It shows up here. So I have this negative dehaze, and you can add a color to it, which I think is kind of interesting. So you can see like it has a pretty large effect, but it's only being applied to this kind of top quarter of the luminance range. So this can kind of help create some additional like continuity between some of your tones, which I think is kind of nice. Like I think that's already feeling better. High blur, this is something I've been playing with. Like it's not even coming into effect right now, really. It's just too long of a low soft, too long. This is where you want to like blurring the highlights a little bit, but it's not really doing it all that well. Glowing image, why is it doing that? So this is all stuff like I'm tried. A lot of people have done it better than me, but I'm still kind of learning. This highlight. So again, adding a bit more of like a glow to the highlights. This is in conjunction with the halation. So then because the process is going left to right, like it's kind of blurring your halation. So then you're kind of minimizing its effect. I don't know. And tweaks, again, this is something I'm doing to offset like the color management, color profile fuckery that I can't figure out. And film, so this is where film nitrate comes in. It's a plugin you can get, and you can do a lot of kind of film characteristics, which I think like if you kind of, I don't know if it'll play and let me bypass. Oh, it will. So if I do like, it's really heavy grain, but like applied properly, you can get into like film chroma. You can get into some like not wacky, but like some like 8 Super 8. Not advised on this one. Can I not undo it? Can. But sometimes like adding some of this in there, there's like a little continuity that you can gain from it. I'm not crazy about it. I don't know why grain saturation's up. That's something that's like a remnant of some of my settings. Is this raw video? No. My camera settings are terrible. Actually, I think I meant to shoot this in log, but I didn't end up doing it. I think this is MOV, MP4. So I'm like still learning. Like I shooting stills is my primary objective when I go out there, and shooting videos like an afterthought. And I wish there was a better way of navigating between like the still and the video and having the color profiles and all these deep settings switch once you go to video. But from what I can gather, they don't, and I don't think about it. Because time's limited, my attention's limited. I don't want to spend 2 hours out here. So this is something I definitely need to get better about. There's so much video like I've just shot with like auto white balance with the wrong format, the wrong frames per second. I'm learning the hard way how to do video, and I'm still not there. Like Peter, like I don't know if you shoot video, I'm sure you might be seeing some stuff that's egregious. Like this is where I'm like a little tepid when it comes to like having too strong of an opinion about anything. Like I think anyone could talk me about off any ledge with this entirely. I think it gets okay results. Again, like stabilization, like I'll probably go in and I'll really dive into getting this stable properly. But things like color grades, color profiles, all this stuff, like I have a way of doing it, but I don't think I'm doing it the best. I have to fix this before I forget. Let's see. Oh, it just looks so saturated. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. But you tell it does look a little chunky also. I don't know if that's this. Shouldn't be. And that feels better. I'm always apprehensive. Like I don't do this in Capture One. Like lifting that bottom point gets you all sorts of problems. But looking at scopes, always super helpful. Super nice addition that you don't. You have the histogram in Capture One, but super powerful in DaVinci. So again, kind of see I'm doing a great job with the film. Grain size. Let's go color, actual size. Let's go fit. So I think the problem is like it's so cropped in trying to stabilize this that I'm losing a lot of information. But probably save, pull up this guy. Stills, just grab a still. No, it's on here. So at least I have this for a reference. Yeah, Peter, I mean, video's been scary for me, and I've like talked to people who shoot a lot more video than I do, and just the depth of things they get into is just, it's so far over my head. Like video, just everything about it is just way more intimidating than shooting stills. It's like File sizes are bigger. There's a ton more settings to account for. It's, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure this is something I'll look back on with regret in terms of like, this was terrible techniques, but yeah, there's a lot of videos online. Like I've literally sat down and watched like intro tutorials on DaVinci Resolve. Like, this is what a node is. This is how it does this. And I think I've gotten to a place where I'm at least kind of comfortable in it. I'm still probably cringeworthy to some people, but I mean, that's going to be everything. So, yeah, like if you're dabbling with it, I just say like keep going, just dive into all these features. And like the way I typically learn is I'll just Google something and just be like, how do I do this specific thing? And that'll introduce me to this tool. Then I'll be like, oh shit, with that tool you can do this. And that's just kind of this trickling down effect. I don't think that's anything that sort of novel or unique. But yeah, so there's like, I don't know what camera you use, but in Sony there's different color profiles. I think with stills I shoot with none, but then I do have my camera right here. So really, what the fuck? Oh. Picture profile. So they have all these different versions. I can't remember how I did this. Picture profile 1. I don't know. Picture profiles altogether are kind of like a whole rabbit hole to dive into. But it does make a huge difference in terms of like the information that's being captured. I'm not quite the person to talk to. I think there's a lot of people who could tell you better. So I'd probably look up color profiles and see kind of what's out there. I'd be irresponsible if I was doling out advice. You can see like this is, it's getting somewhere. Stabilization needs work. Grade could use some love. I still have a hard time with some of these. I still want to come in and do like traditional curves and edit things this way, but I don't know if that's the best way to do it or not. But I am probably gonna have to call this a stream at this point. But it's been super fun. Hopefully useful. Hopefully DVR stuff in there. I'll probably go through my usual spiel of like I want to stream again soon, but then I have a ton of shit I'm kind of wrapped up with right now. But yeah, it's probably gonna become more regular once I'm done with contract work and I can figure out a way to show design stuff. Because I do want to kind of show the whole gamut, but there's just logistical things to figure out. So yeah, thank you for everyone. Questions, super rad. Yeah, thank you, Peter. Stoked you stopped in. Great questions. Yeah, subscribe. Because I think today was like one of the few times I've put it on my Insta channel. I try not to kind of blast those, but yeah, hopefully this will be more of a regular thing. I can get my shit together. So, all right.